All right, guys, welcome back. So last time we had this session, we unfortunately I recorded the session, but it didn't come out correctly. The only thing that I actually recorded was the video and also your voice, but my voice was not recorded in the file that I saved. So therefore, I'm just gonna quickly just redo the lab again. That way, you guys can have it saved. Just as a reminder, we had this session on November 16th, 2020. And in this session, we went over the cyber kill chain and we went over the 7 steps or the 7 phases of the cyber kill chain. After we went over the 7 phases, we then went into a scenario. And this scenario was part of a lab that I showcased for you. Now, this lab was a middle ground between a lab that's fairly straightforward. I just want to showcase exactly a sample lab that the students will be able to achieve once you go through the curriculum with them. So let me just tell you again what the scenario was. In this particular scenario, you have a CEO that is a very active Twitter user. And he has a disgruntled employee who is using the post that he makes, the public post that he makes, to find information about this CEO. Now, what he's trying to do is he's trying to get information about his operating system, his lifestyle, his pattern. And using this information, he's able to make a very educated decision as to how to attack this person. Now, in this lab, this is more of a red team lab. And this is a scenario where if you are to present it to your students, you need to think about the ethics involved behind it. And the next step will be to think about how to secure or how to prevent such cases from happening. But either way, we're going to take a look at this topology here to give you guys the setup in terms of the network topology and how the network looks and how this attack is going to look. We're going to have 2 computers. We're going to have the attacker, who is a disgruntled employee, and we have the victim, which in this case is the CEO of the company. Now, they're both connected to the same local area network. So what are the steps involved here? If you take a look over here in this brain map that I will share with you, there are 7 steps. Step number 1 is to create the file on the desktop. Now, this is going to be the attacker side. We're going to create the file there. We're going to test it out before we send it over to the victim's computer. Once we know that this is actually working, whenever the victim clicks on it, it should initiate a connection to our attacker's computer. So we're going to create the file in the desktop and we're going to name it malware.desktop. And this particular shortcut link, when we double click on it, it's going to run a script, a malicious script that will connect directly to our attacker's computer. Once we do so, once we create the file, we're going to tell the computer not to interpret this as a text file, but to interpret this as an application. And again, the reason why we're doing this is we're trying to trick the computer into believing that this is an application that was previously installed. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to change the file name to seem like it's a different file name. In other words, it's not going to show malware.desktop. Instead, it's going to show finance-q4-2020.pdf. And we chose this name specifically because the victim, again, is a CEO. And we believe that the CEO will open up a file that is related to his finance, more specifically Q4 of his company. I'm pretty sure that when it comes to the shareholders, this is definitely something of an importance to the CEO. He needs to make sure that the shareholders are actually good in terms of how he's managing the business. So we're trying to increase the odds of him opening up this file. And that's the reason why we rename it to this. If we have the original name, if we leave it just as malware.desktop, I'm pretty sure people will find it suspicious and would think about why is it that there's a malicious file in the desktop. So we don't really want that to happen. We just want him to open it up just like he will open up any other files that he's used to. After we change the name or we cloak the name, we're going to put in the script that will connect back to our attacker's computer. So this is really the script that's going to do all the magic. And then the last thing was change the icon so that it can look like a regular PDF. Once we create these things, we make these changes, we're gonna then send it over to the victim's computer. And when we send it over to the victim's computer, we're gonna make a few assumptions. In real life, the way that you get it over, there are many different ways. In real life, there are many different ways to get the files over to your victim's computer. Maybe you'll do some kind of Trojan attack, or attach it to a video, attach it to a picture that the user may be interested in. Or maybe you'll send them an email link that will take them to a website. And once they go to that website, it will automatically download it. The method and strategy to get it over to the victim's computer is outside of the scope of this exercise. Pretty much what we're trying to demonstrate here is how easy it is to actually have a malicious file, and with just a few short words, a few short lines of code scripting. All right, so without further ado, let's get started. So what I did here is I have my two computers. The red one over here is going to be the attacker's computer, and the blue one here is going to be the victim's computer. I just wanted to color code it so that we are aware as to which computer belongs to whom. I have the topology up here if you guys want to reference it. And I also have the step over here on the left side as well. That way I can point exactly which step we're following as we're going through it. All right, so we're going to create this file on the attacker's computer, on the attacker side. So this is the red computer right here. I noticed that the IP address is a little bit wrong. I think I got the wrong file here. So the IP address is wrong. So we're going to have to change it up just a little bit. So just keep that in mind as we're going through the video. So once I put the IP address here, it may not be the same thing that we see here on this side. All right, so let's get started. So we're going to open up the terminal on the attacker's computer. And I'm just going to move this to the right side here so that once we make changes, you will actually see it on the desktop as it's being created. We're going to change directory to the desktop. So I'm going to put cd, change directory, and I'm going to type in desktop. And you'll notice that the directory was changed from the home directory to the desktop directory. Now we're actually in this folder right here where we see these three files. Now we're going to create the text file or the shortcut link called malware.desktop. And what we do that is just by typing in nano malware.desktop. Now I previously done these steps, so that's the reason why it shows up. So when you're running, it may not show up as it does with mine. So let me just explain what Nano is real quickly. So Nano is just a word editor, a text editor, similar to Microsoft Word or Google Docs. But this is a command line text editor. So once we open it up, we're going to type in desktop entry. So this is a header. So once the computer sees this header, it knows that this is a shortcut link. And we're going to say what kind of application or what kind of file this is. And we're going to trick it. We're going to say this is not a text file, this is actually an application. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to change the name of this application. But before we do so, let me just save this real quickly so you can see how it will look if we don't change the name. So if you notice over here on the left side, we save the text over here, or the application, or sorry, we save the file. And once we save the file, notice it says malware.desktop. That's the file name that it has. And again, if you see this in your own computer, you're going to be very suspicious about this. So we need to cloak this name to something else, something that the victim, in this case, the CEO of the company, won't be too suspicious about. So we're going to change, or we're going to cloak the name to finance Q4. So dash Q4 and 2020 PDF. So we're going to cloak this as a PDF document. I think we all know what PDF document is, and whenever we see it, we don't really think too much of it. All right, and then we're going to go on to the script, which is right here. The script, what this does is it initiates a connection back to the attacker's computer, and then it connects to the attacker's IP address and to a specific port that we are going to open up. So before I continue here to finish off this command, I need to get the IP address of this computer. So let me just open up a new terminal and let me get the IP address. All right, so this computer's IP address is 10.02.15. I remember this right here, it's not the same thing. So the IP address changed a little bit. So that's the reason why it's not the same as what we have here. So in your computer, you may need to find what your IP address is going to be for your computer, which may change as well. It may be a little bit different. All right, so let me just change the screen size and we're going to put my IP address. And again, the reason why we're putting my IP address is because we're going to send this file over to the victim's computer. And once the CEO opens up the file, we want it to connect back to us. So the next thing we're going to do is choose the port. So the port is like a door to our computer. So once the victim clicks on the file, it's going to connect to our computer using the IP address. And then it needs to know which port or which door to go in through. And we're going to tell it to go through door 4071. And this is in reference to my classroom in Queens Technical High School. All right, so now that we created this file and we put the script here, we're going to save this. And the way we save this is by doing the write out action that's here. So this caret is actually the control key on your keyboard. So we're gonna press Control and O at the same time. And it's gonna ask us if we wanna save it. We're just gonna hit enter. And notice that the file name over here changed from malware.desktop to finance Q4 2020. All right, so this is good. So let's test this out before we move any further. I'm going to open up I'm going to use this terminal on the side here, and I am going to tell my computer to listen to port 4071. So I'm going to put netcat, listen to port 4071, and be a little bit verbose about that. So tell me what's going on. So I'm going to hit enter. And notice it says listening on any 4071. So any interface, it's listening on any interface and it's listening on port 4071 for any kind of connection to come in. So I'm going to double click here on this file and I'm going to launch, and notice that it says connect. All right, so basically at this point, we tested the file and it connected back to us. It connected back to the computer. So it did a little loop back to the computer itself. We know it's connecting. I'm going to send a few commands and I see that the command is working. So that is great for us. So let me just clear this. Let me cancel, clear. All right. Now that we tested this and it actually works, we're going to change this icon. Again, remember the file name we're choosing is financeq42020.pdf. The reason why we're choosing this file is because we want to increase the odds of the CEO actually opening up the file and for him not to be suspicious about this file. But again, I think everybody knows what a PDF document is, and we've never seen this icon here whenever we see a PDF document. So we're going to put this command here to change the icon. So since this is a really long file name, I don't want to make any mistakes. So I am just going to copy and paste it here. Didn't work. All right, so I may have to type it up. All right, so icon equal user share icons flat remix blue dark. Mime types scalable application PDF SVG. All right, so hopefully I didn't make any mistakes. And if I did this correctly, you should see that this icon should change to something that we're a little bit more familiar with. There you go. So now this definitely looks like an icon that belongs to a PDF document. So we're good at this point. All right, so now we have our file, our shortcut link. We are telling the computer, the operating system, to treat this not as a text file, but as an application, then we're cloaking the name so that it doesn't show the malware.desktop. Instead, it shows finance Q4 2020.pdf. And then we are putting in a little script that connects back to our computer, so back to the attacker's computer, using port 4071. And the last thing we did here was we changed the icon so they can look like a PDF document. All right, so we already saw that it worked. So let's just test it one more time. So I'm gonna put netcat LVP 4071, and I'm listening on that port. So let me double click it now. All right, so it connected, so that's good. So now the challenge that the attacker is gonna have is to send over this file to the victim's computer. And again, now there's many different ways for them to do it, but we're just gonna skip that over. We're just gonna make it a little bit easy for us. We're going to put a HTTP server on the attacker side. And then when it comes to the victim side, we're just gonna open up the command prompt and download the file through the web server that's hosted on the web server on this side. We're gonna open up another command prompt here, and I'm gonna switch over to the desktop because right now I'm in my home directory. So I'm gonna switch over to desktop, and here I'm going to run a Python web server. So I'm gonna put in python-m simple HTTP server. Hit enter, and you'll notice that it's listening in port 8000. So usually a web server is in port 80. And in this case, it's gonna be port 8000. You know what, just for consistency, let's put port 80. And that port is not available for us. So let's just stick to 4071 to keep everything consistent. Okay, so on the victim side, let's make believe that since this employee is in the same building as the CEO needed to have their computer fixed because they had some kind of issue. So therefore the attacker has access to the CEO computer. So what they want to do is plant this malicious file onto the desktop. That way, whenever the CEO goes home or is anywhere in the network, they will be able to have some kind of backdoor access to their computer. So since the attacker has access to the CEO's computer, we're just going to open up terminal on this side, and it is taking, I don't know what's going on here. There you go. It's just lagging a little bit. All right, so since the attacker has access to the CEO's computer, we're just gonna come over and open up a terminal window. And we're gonna switch over to desktop because this is a desktop shortcut file. And we're going to use the wget to retrieve the file from the attacker's computer. So we get the file, we can, remember the real file name is malware.desktop, not the finance Q4. So it shows as finance Q4, but the real file name is malware.desktop. So when we're making the request to the HTTP server that we created on the other side, we need to make sure that we put the real file name, which in this case is malware.desktop. But even though this is what the real file name is, you'll notice that once it gets downloaded, it should have finance Q4 2020. So let's hit enter. Notice it downloaded. Over here it's giving us confirmation that someone connected to the computer, and the IP address that connected to this computer was 10.0.26. It actually downloaded the file using HTTP protocol. And if you take a look at the desktop here, you see the finance Q4 2020. Again, we cloaked the real file name, which is malware.desktop, to finance Q4 2020. All right, now that we have the file over, the only thing we need to do is run our listener at port 4071 and just wait for the CEO to open up the file. Once the CEO opens up the file, we will have connection to their computer. So notice here it says connect to 10.02.15 from 10.026. So 10.026 is actually the CEO's computer in this case. And I am going to issue a command. And you'll notice that everything that's here, it's actually on the CEO's computer. And I see a very interesting file here called credentials. So I'm going to open up that file. I'm going to use Nano once again, that word editor, and see what's inside of this credentials.txt file. Okay, so Nano is not working. So we're going to use something a little bit different. We're going to use cat to just show us what's inside that file, but show it to us in the command prompt. So we're not opening up any application. There you go. So notice that we got something juicy here. We got the CEO's Chase Bank information, which his username is Valdez. His password is password123. And we also got their Gmail information. Again, valdez@gmail.com, and the password is munch. So as you guys can see, it is pretty straightforward to gain access to somebody's computer or to leave some kind of backdoor into someone else's computer. So when we're showing this to the students, it's very important to talk about ethics, not just once, but it needs to be a repeating content or topic that you always come back to. The ethics here is very important because with this knowledge, students can do a lot of damage to the family members, friends, and other staff members in your school. So it's very important for us to frame things into what the reality is in terms of what their role will be if they become a cybersecurity analyst, which is you're protecting the people, you're protecting a company. And what you're trying to do here is you're trying to gain access to a server or to a computer for the purpose of identifying weaknesses that exist in the company so that you can then patch it up, so that you can then fix those weaknesses. In other words, the role here is to find the holes that exist in your network before an attacker does. Once you find it before the attacker does, you'll be able to fix it. All right, guys, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I hope that you guys enjoyed this curriculum. I hope that if you have any questions, you'll reach out to us and keep an open dialogue. And I hope that we can create a community where we can all share knowledge and content that we learn through our own journey as we progress and develop in cybersecurity. Thank you so much.